Hello, everybody. This is Mike Banner with our 12th episode of the 62 Who Knew podcast, which is the 137th episode of the 62 Who Knew television show. Today's guest was on that television show. We're going to talk about the record she broke in just a few minutes. But as always, I want to take 30 seconds to welcome new viewers to the 62 Who Knew podcast. What is 62 Who Knew? Why is it here? Well, the truth of the matter is, as people approach their 60s, usually in their mid to upper 50s, they start thinking, I'm approaching 62. That's when the world wants to retire. Not many people can retire in their 60s today because of economic situations, but that is the goal. And our fathers, their fathers, even their fathers before them, they all had the same questions. Should I take my Social Security at 62, or should I defer it till later? Should I keep working, or should I stop? Should I have paid off my house? Damn it, I didn't pay off my house in time. Isn't it time I let go of my life insurance? My kids are older. I didn't buy long-term care insurance. Is it too late? Well, our fathers and grandfathers all had those same thoughts that we do today. But we, and when I say we, I'm on the older part of the scale of baby boomers. Baby boomers today have one different obstacle than our fathers and our grandfathers and our mothers and our grandmothers, and that is longer lifespans. The scientific breakthroughs, medical and technology of the last 30, 40 years have brought unbelievable leaps and strides to our quality of life. And today, if you make it to 62 years old, and please notice I said make it. I didn't say make it healthy. You'll be a big boy like me, okay? Just make it. You have a 50-50 chance of making it to 90. Who knew at 62 that you have another 30 years to go? That's half the time you've been on this planet. And 98% of us do not have the financial wherewithal. Here I am doing a podcast, just a few months short of my 67th birthday, to live those last 30 years in quality. But the point is, you can. There are products and services out there that you can plan for in your 50s and even into your mid and upper 60s that you think are only for the wealthy. Long-term care insurance, annuities, just staggering things. Uses for Social Security that you didn't even know were available, but they are. And that's why we created 62 Who Knew, to bring those experts into your home to tell you that you can have that same quality of life from 62 to 92. And today's guest is probably one of the most incredible guests that I've ever had on the TV show. I'm going to read you some of her bio, because if I read you her whole bio, it would be like reading someone's bio who was just getting ready to win an Academy Award as you're listing her accomplishments. So I'm not going to embarrass her by reading the whole thing, but meet Nancy Hetrick. Nancy founded Smarter Divorce Solutions in 2011 after going through her own less than optimal divorce. Well, that is good words. I had two less than optimal divorces. That's very good. Nancy has been a financial advisor and planner since 1999. The majority of her career was with Charles Schwab and their private client division till she went independent in 2011. Here's the biggie. In 2016, Nancy founded the Divorce Financial Planner Training Center to offer continuing education to CDFA holders everywhere. Nancy is a master analyst in financial forensics and is probably the number one source, not probably, she is the number one source in the country on gray divorce, a term that most of us are aware of in the financial world, but maybe not our viewers. She is the author of two books. One is Divorce is Not for Dummies, which is true. Marriage may be for dummies, but that's a different episode and a different show. She literally wrote the book for attorneys to create a model and build a practice on gray divorce. Nancy, with all your incredible accomplishments, I'm now going to list in my heart the number one accomplishment that you had. Is that okay with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, on the 62 Who Knew television show, that we were very, very proud to have 50, 60, in one case, even 70,000 views in a month, which for an independent little cable show, we were so proud of. Until Nancy Hetrick came on. And she broke the record with a little over 100,000 views, not the month that you were on, but the week that you were on. And I think that's right up there with a Pulitzer Prize or possibly a Nobel Prize. But you hold the record, and we're going to break that record today. Welcome, Nancy. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you so much. And I have to say, that record was not about me. That was about the topic. And that tells you just how many people are being impacted by divorce in their 50s, 60s, and even 70s, and even 80s.
Yeah. It's, when you say that, it does literally give me the chills. I don't know if the camera is high definition enough to see that, because I personally have friends. I have a friend right now who is 40 tomorrow with a 1-year-old child going through a divorce, and she has 2 older children. I have 2 relatives in their 60s going through friendly divorces, but still it is an upheaval to financial, to children. Tell us, in your opinion, why is this happening? Why is gray divorce suddenly on the tip of every financial planner's tongue?
Yeah, that's a great question. This, you probably have seen a lot of articles written in the last 10 to 15 years. And it all started in 2004 when we had a study, a landmark study that was released that studied divorce between 1990 and 2010. And they were shocked to discover during that 20-year time frame, the rate of divorce for people over age 50 had doubled. And it caught everyone off guard. No one saw that coming. And as a result, every industry out there immediately shifted and said, whoa, how do we help that population? And so we started to really look at it at that point, and what are the specific needs these people have, and studying why is it happening, and what is going on, and as with so many societal changes in the last 50 years, blame the baby boomers.
Yeah, it's all our fault. It is.
They're the individualists. They're the ones that are doing everything different in very large numbers. And they're the ones that, let's face it, they grew up in the age of free love. And it's the generation that far more likely than previous generations to be unfaithful.
Yeah. And it is very sad, but that's so true. I mean,
yeah, it's very, very true. And then in addition, they're actively remarrying, or second marriages, even third marriages, which are even more likely to end in divorce.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt that the baby boomers, and I'm on the upper scale of that, and I laugh about my 2 divorces, but they're not laughable. One was a terrible divorce, and one was a very friendly divorce. And ex-wife number 2 is still one of my closest friends in life. I don't think we've ever had a fight about anything. But the first one was rough. But the younger generation, which my parents would consider, me, the younger generation, they just don't take marriage as serious as our parents and grandparents did. And let's face it, it is serious. It only happens 2 or 3 times a lifetime. We have to be very careful, with who we marry and who we pick. But they also love immediate gratification. They want to be happy. And I know my Jewish mom would kill me from this. She'd come out from the grave and kill me for saying this. But my mom and dad were married 53 years, but they stayed together for the children. There was no yelling. There was no screaming. We were together on every holiday. Jewish holidays, bar mitzvahs, Easters with our friends, dances, everything you can imagine. And they didn't divorce because of the children.
Well, so let me ask you another question, though, Michael.
Go.
Was your mother employed while you were young?
No. She was a greatest generation mom.
So this is one of the other things to really think about. On the surface, it feels like, oh, well, people aren't taking marriage seriously anymore. They were staying together for the kids. I'll tell you what, the reality is your mother was staying because what in the world would she do on her own? Right? And so this is a big reason I think we're seeing this trend is generationally, baby boomer women largely were still stay-at-home moms. If they worked part-time, but they were certainly underemployed relative to their spouse. Now we have these women in this new generation, in this new paradigm, where women have been empowered to support themselves and to return to the workplace. And some of these women are approaching retirement. And culturally, we've had this shift where your marital partner is indeed supposed to be viewed as your partner. And that old Ozzie and Harriet view of a dominant male partner and a subservient female partner is gone. But it's not necessarily gone from 30 to 50-year marriages that started back in the
That's
60s
right.
and 70s. So what I see in my office a lot is women standing up and saying, you know what? There's enough money now for both of us to be okay. I don't want to live like this anymore.
And power
And
to them.
largely gray divorce, 85% initiated by women.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
I did not know that. Wow.
Another very interesting statistic with gray divorce, the vast majority of men remarry within 2 years.
Yeah, we need women.
Vast majority of women never remarry.
Well, I don't mean this sarcastically. I mean, I'm the host of the show, and I've always said that my duty as the host of the show is to ask good questions, but the star of this show is always my guest. So I make a witty or sometimes sarcastic comment through there so people know I'm still here. But you have to get older to realize men need women. I'm sorry. We need the emotional support. We need it for so many different ways. Women don't need men. Not today's and the immediate past generation. We're a convenience. We're emotional. And I'm not putting down women. I think it's great. But they get to a point in life where they go, he's not making me happy. I don't feel fulfilled. I'm out of here. Men get to that same point and go, yeah, but I'm staying.
Right. This is
They
a
do.
massive, massive shift in the way that we view marriage. If you think about before 1970s, largely women got married so that they would have someone to financially support them.
Yes.
We needed a provider. We needed to be provided for. And, the revolution of women entering the workforce, women now get more college degrees than men get. So the reason for marriage for women has changed, to your point. It's not that we don't need you. We don't want to need anybody. Women now want to marry someone they want to be with.
Mm-hmm.
I want a partner. I want somebody who we have mutual respect. We have similar values. And that's the number one reason I see for people getting divorces. They get divorced when they're young, or they get married, when they're young and stupid and they're caught up in lust and all of that stuff. But they forgot to realize that marriage is really kind of a business partnership. And if you're not both on the same page, it's only a matter of time before things just fall apart.
Yeah, and I also think that the environment in today's crazy world, and I don't mean today as in the last year or 2 years, I don't do anything political on this website. I'm not just the way society has grown. Your values change as you grow. I can honestly say I wrote a book, A Gift from My Father, about my dad. His values from the time he came back from World War II in 1945 till the day he died in 2005. His values didn't change. They were the greatest American values, greatest American generation values, and they were the best values. But in today's world, things are just changing so rapidly. Podcasts, this stupid thing that brings everybody, I think, together, but may hurt us as much as it helps us, I think, sometimes. Yeah. I know that makes me sound old when I say that. But values change. I'm seeing men and women who love each other dearly simply outgrow each other, simply separate their needs and go, when did this happen? Right. I mean, I love you. When did this happen?
So that's a really good point, because we've talked about a couple of things, right? We've talked about the cultural changes that can lead to this, where women are viewing marriage differently. And we've talked about, the baby boomer individualist mentality. But the other things that contribute to this pattern are, maybe you've got one party that has declining health, and the other party is vibrant and active and, still out there shaking and moving at 70. And they don't want to be a caregiver for the rest of their lives. And just simply the extended lifespans. I'll tell you what, I see a lot of gray divorce in my office, people that are in their late 60s, early 70s, whose parents are still alive.
Yeah.
So they're looking at, to your point, talking about our longer lifespans, they're looking at a 20-year time period where they don't want that lifestyle anymore for their golden years. And that can really be a divergence. The other thing that we see happening a lot, we saw it in COVID, across all of the ages, but it's the exact same thing as when boomers retire. So you might have a relationship that worked really, really well when you saw each other a few hours a day and on the weekends. And now that it's 24/7, you find out you maybe don't like each other as much as you thought you were going to.
Yeah, we're laughing about that, but it's so true. And it's just human nature.
Yeah.
It's not like either one of them did anything wrong.
Right.
It's just, yeah, when other than my dog, there's a certain amount of people on this planet that I just love and cherish. I don't know if I'd love and cherish if I was with them 24 hours a day. Now, I could be with the dog 24 hours a day and still love and cherish the dog. But I'm not sure any humans I could take 24 hours a day. So, yeah, that mental change is just staggering. Now, let me just give a quick reminder to everybody that's here. This is the 62 Who Knew podcast, the podcast that is looking into the double-edged sword of longer lifespans. And today's guest is Miss Nancy Hetrick, the #1 source in the nation on gray divorce, and we were so glad to have her. The other thing that's a little strange is since one of my divorces resulted in a quite emotional, time-taking, financially crippling custody battle over younger children. The older divorces, the children are older. You would think, okay, the children are not affected. But nothing could be further from the truth because they're older. It is affecting them. Maybe there's grandchildren that aren't going to see Nanny and Poppy as much, or at least one of them. That's what our grandparents call me. Our grandchildren call me. Maybe they're not going to see one of them as much. And then also we have so many second and third marriages. Right. Some of these children are his, hers, and ours. How is that changing the will, Mom?
Well, there's that, and then, good Lord, holidays. What the heck do we do on the holidays?
Oh, my God. Yeah.
It's really complicated, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so speaking of kids, that's the other thing that can trigger this. You know, in the last, I would say, 30 years, we have started, again, culturally, we're having children a little bit later in life, not in our early 20s, but in our early or mid 30s. So now we often have the empty nesters. And so this is an issue about identity, where for a period of maybe 15 years, you put your marriage secondary to your role as parents, and you move into these identity as parents.
Yes.
Then those kids leave the house, and some folks just really can't find their way back to their identity as lovers and as the people that they married in the first place. So that's another big contributing factor.
A huge contributing factor. You know, you want your children to grow up, and your job is to get them ready to go up and be independent. And, you know, but I'll freely admit, because I have 3 of the best children in the world, if they all wanted to live with me till the day I died, I'd be fine with that too. I know my friends and doctors and lawyers and psychologists would say that's not really good for them. But I would take care of them if I could till the day I die. To me, that was instilled with me by my greatest generation, mother and father. You know, you don't take care of your children till they're 18 or till they move out or till they finish college. You take care of them forever if you're capable of taking care of them.
And I cannot relate to that at all. Because as a proud Gen Xer, me and all my Gen X friends were like, we knew the minute we graduated high school, there's the door. What are you going to do? Thanks so much for living here. Have a good life. And I hear that universally among my Gen X peers. Like that
kills me.
Yeah.
That's making my insides do this right now.
Yeah.
You know, there's a saying, and I've Googled it, and I've even used AI, artificial intelligence, to find out who said it. Nobody knows who said it. It's very old-fashioned, and whether it's to my credit or to my discredit, I live by it. And sometimes it makes life rough. And the quote is, a parent can only be as happy as their unhappiest child. And I know that's a weird quote, and I know it's a quote that many parents of later generations than mine are not living by. Right. Doesn't mean they're not good parents, but that's what I was brought up with. And I don't really want to change.
You hear all the Gen X stuff, right? This is one of the reasons we're like the toughest generation ever. We're the ones that are just like, bring it on, we'll be fine, you know?
Fine, yeah. We were toilet trained at gunpoint. Just bring it on. It's not a problem.
Exactly. Who needs no stinking car seat? We don't need no stinking helmet. Let me drink out of the hose.
Yeah, come on. Seatbelts? Wussies. Come on, I can go flying out of the back seat and still be fine. It's just so funny because I'm old enough to remember being in the back seat without a seatbelt, let alone the windows up in New York. The winter heat, windows up, and my dad smoking a Lucky Strike. Not because real men back then, they didn't smoke cigarettes with filters.
That's
Lucky
right.
Strike, baby.
That's
and
right.
I'm there in the back going, we were real men, so we took it.
Absolutely. So we've talked about, some of the reasons that this gray divorce trend has happened. And so let's pivot a little bit and talk about what are the unique concerns and challenges that this population is then faced with. Obviously, and this is the same for most people getting divorces, but the same money that's been supporting one household now has to support two. And so both of them are going to take a 25% drop in their standard of living, unless someone is willing to re-educate, get into the workforce, and somehow increase the income coming in. For this population, that's usually not even an option.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that becomes a very, very big foreboding financial concern. And of course, because they're so close to retirement, they've had this grand retirement plan that now they each get to approach having only half the resources that they were going to have. It's a very different view.
That's devastating.
Yeah.
I mean, because the older you get, I'm learning this the hard way too, the harder it is to change. So, if you are used to certain things in life, let's forget multimillionaires, and we're not talking about that. You're worth 10 million and you get divorced and now you're only worth 5 million. Boo-hoo. I couldn't care less. But to your average couple that, teachers, firemen, policemen, mortgage people, that have X and now suddenly have to have half of X. And suddenly instead of having, the exact car that they want, it's a little less expensive. And instead of taking a cruise twice a year, maybe you do it once a year. And then, of course, you go further down, and I don't mean down, but to a lower income, to your average American who today, their homeowner's insurance premium is almost as high as their mortgage payment. Their car insurance, the average car is 50 G's. This is the worst possible time emotionally, physically, and financially for it to be happening to people. But as you said, it's more than doubled since they came out with that study. It's just the worst of all times for this to happen.
Think about costs of healthcare. So imagine if you've got a couple where you have a stay-at-home spouse or an underemployed spouse and an employee spouse, and maybe they're 3 or 4 years away from Medicare. Well, the employee spouse gets to keep health insurance. The other person doesn't. And so now they have to go get private health insurance. And I got news for you. I just moved from Phoenix into northern Arizona, more rural community. And as a self-employed person, having to go to the exchanges, because my husband is 61, we're right there. To get health insurance here, first of all, there's one plan for me to choose from. And we are paying $2,400 a month with a $7,000 deductible. So we have to budget $40,000 a year for health care until Social Security kicks in. That's insane. I think that's a huge burden on some of these couples, and especially for the spouse that has delegated the finances for their entire marriage. And that is not always the women.
No, that is absolutely correct.
Let me tell you what, men that know absolutely nothing about finance, doctors and lawyers.
Absolutely true. Right? They're my favorite mortgage clients.
Yeah.
They go, Michael, we trust you. Call our CPA. How much money did you make last year? I have no idea. Just call my CPA.
And so thankfully for those two professions, they can afford to hire the professionals they need. But
exactly.
Imagine for that more stereotypical non-CFO spouse who was the stay-at-home mom and was married for 30 years and now has to deal with managing all of her own finances. It is horrifying. And not only is there a great deal of fear about that, but there's a sense of shame. I talk to a lot of women who are really ashamed of themselves for not being more involved in the finances. And I always tell them, listen, it just wasn't your job. You just haven't been trained in this position. And let me help you get trained in that position so that you can feel competent.
Yeah, a couple of our previous guests, I think you know one of them or both of them, Kathy Sigorsky and Marie. Just went blank on Marie's last name. I want to. Yes. Yes, we brought them on specifically to discuss that. Forget divorce for a second. Women do have other obstacles in their way when they're in a happy marriage and it's been 40 years and 62 is approaching. Divorce isn't even a subject. But mom and dad, who both made great money, look in their 401ks, because let's face it, we are a 401k or an IRA country now. So few people get lifetime pensions like our parents. And yet dad has maybe 200,000-300,000 more than mom. Mm-hmm. That's weird. I make as much money as my husband. Why? But again, it gets back to being the woman who is the matriarch of the family. They don't think back to 10, 15 years ago when they took 8 years off to take care of their mom, or maybe a child with asthma, or maybe an in-law that needed help.
Right.
And the wife and husband looked at each other and went, well, one of us has to stay home with mom or with little Billy that has asthma. Right. And who was it? It was the mom that went, well, that's got to be me. I want it to be me. But she took herself out of the workplace for 8 years or 6 years or 10 years. And then gets to retirement and goes, wow, I would never change that decision.
Right.
But look what it's done to my retirement account.
Now, thankfully, divorce laws do protect her in that situation, where upon divorce, those retirement assets will be equalized.
I didn't know that.
Absolutely. And that doesn't matter if it's a community property state or an equitable distribution state. They're going to equalize those assets, because whatever is earned during the marriage, you both earned. Doesn't matter whose name's on it. Okay. So there's laws.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's laws in place to protect that. However, what about Social Security?
I was just going to bring that up.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Social Security is not part of divorce law. Social Security legally is defined to be each person's sole and separate property. Well, this is a real problem for people in getting gray divorces, because standard advice for financial planners, when we're advising our couples and we're doing a couple strategy for Social Security, we're going to advise that the lower wage earner claim Social Security early, and that the higher wage earner actually wait and claim Social Security, certainly not early, but even wait until 70, because that will then lock in the highest widow's benefit for the surviving spouse. And you kind of cover both bases, where you've got a longevity risk of, am I going to live long enough for that waiting to take it to pay for itself? Maybe. But if you take some of it early, then you're going to cover that base. And so it's a very holistic strategy.
Yeah.
So I had a couple that I worked with. Wife was 65, husband was 72, and they had been married excess of 25 years. Their financial planner had given them this strategy. So here they were, both in payout status on Social Security. And by the way, both very, very professional and had earned similar incomes. Wife was getting $1,300 a month in Social Security. Husband was getting $3,900 per month.
He maxed out almost.
Okay. This is how dramatic that difference can be. Now, if that couple is in a court, those two numbers are irrelevant. Sorry about your luck. These gray divorce couples are very, very well suited for mediation or collaborative divorce, one of the out-of-court settlement solutions. This couple was using collaborative divorce, and they each had earned state of Arizona pensions. And we were able to put together a wonderful creative settlement proposal where we transferred some of husband's Arizona pension to wife, extra pension, to equalize for their difference in Social Securities. Now,
that's incredible.
That can only be done by agreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this couple had been married a long time. They wanted to be fair and to treat each other, in a fair way. And it only made sense to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Social Security can have a whole bunch of different pitfalls to it that gray divorcing couples really need to be aware of. Widows benefits, the divorced spouse's benefit, how are those impacted? What happens if you remarry? All kinds of Social Security planning that needs to be done in that situation.
Now, people are also working longer, along with these longer lifespans and gray divorces that could be their second or possibly their third coming up one day. People are working longer. I just learned from you just now, that the 401k issue can be balanced out. Yeah. That's incredible. Is that affected possibly if one or both of them continue? Let's say the one with the larger 401k, who gave a lot back, whether it's man or woman, to even things out, but the one with the lower one decided to keep working. And she became a superstar at whatever she's doing in her 50s, 60s, and 70s. Therefore, her Social Security continued to rise. Her 401k continued to rise. Does it ever get equaled out the other way? Does somebody come back and go,
after the date of divorce, anything that happens in your life from that point forward is your life.
Makes sense.
Period. And like one of the things I always say to clients too is your spouse's ability to earn a living is not a marital asset. So even if you have a non-employed spouse and a physician, that person's ability to continue being a physician and earning significantly more money than you, not a marital asset. It is income available for support, but you don't get to share in their future earning abilities. Now that's a change.
That's a huge change.
Yeah, back in the 80s, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
In the 80s, divorce was deemed to be breach of a lifetime contract. And because it was a lifetime contract, the laws were structured to make the other person whole as though they had been married for a lifetime. Well, that has changed dramatically in the last...
In all 50 states?
Yes. At this point, yes.
That is staggering to me.
Yeah. There is some variation. I will tell you that it still clings a little bit in the Northeast, especially. But for the most part, all of the statutes now have gone to everything you accumulated during the marriage is split 50-50. And alimony or spousal maintenance is only awarded on a rehabilitative basis, long enough for that person to be able to figure out how to become self-sufficient. That's it.
Anthony, did you hit the record button when she said, your marriage, I hope I'm quoting it right, your spouse's ability to earn income is not a marital asset?
It's not a marital
I clipped
asset.
it.
We take certain clips because we're getting ready to blast them out, and that one's going to go viral. There's no way to get around it. That one's going to go viral because, again, over my career as a mortgage banker, as I now convert to podcast host, I can't tell you how many divorce decrees that I get, and either my processor or my underwriter has to read, and it's a doctor in their 60s, not retired yet, married once or twice, and alimony on the first wife, which was in his late 20s, was $80,000. And I go, wow, you were making that much money when you graduated college that you could pay this? And he went, oh, no. The judge said I'm a doctor, and that's what I have to pay. Yet,
Changed a lot.
And you say, oh, that is so good. And it's good for both sides. I'm sorry.
I think it is. Because I think
in
general now, women don't want to be dependent on someone else.
No.
But the reality is with these couples, does anybody have to pay alimony when they're retired?
I don't know, do they?
Very rarely.
Really? So
If you
couple
don't have income coming in, how are you supposed to have income going out?
Okay, so that's if you're not working. They're retired.
If you're retired, yeah.
Okay.
Now, because if you are one of those rare, lucky government workers who actually earned a pension, well, guess what? It's being divided in the divorce as a marital asset. So you were planning on getting this maybe $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 a month in pension income. Well, half of that's going to your ex-spouse anyway. So that's kind of like support. But really, so much of gray divorce is your property division.
Yes.
What do you have in property that you're going to be able to live on for the rest of your retirement? So this is where, for folks that did not prepare adequately for retirement,
That's right.
unfortunately, they're going to be continuing to work indefinitely.
For a long time.
long time.
They're gonna start a podcast when they're 67 years old. Like,
Yep.
me. Yes, they're gonna have to do that.
This is also a population where we have to get creative. And this is my very favorite thing of working with people getting great divorces is how can we think outside the box to solve the problems? Okay. So for instance, I had a couple, and I see this a lot actually, where 7, 8 years prior to the divorce, wife's parents had passed away. She had received a $500,000 inheritance. She sent $100,000 to pay down their house. They used another $100,000 to remodel the kitchen and bedroom and bathroom. They used another $100,000 to help their kids go to college. So in essence, now they're in front of me. They're going to get a divorce. Wife's inheritance has been used during the marriage. Now, the listeners that might not know it, when it comes to divorce, inheritance is sole and separate property that is not available for division as long as you kept it separated.
Is that a federal law?
Yes. So
wow.
hers got dissipated into the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So now husband has parents that are ailing. And he knows his inheritance is going to come shortly. And oh, guess what? Now I want a divorce. So now here's a situation where this couple planned their retirement based on that inheritance. And because of that, they spent hers. And now in a divorce, she has zero legal entitlement to his future inheritance. Zero. Absolutely zero. So that can be devastating to somebody who was planning on that. Now, thank goodness, a lot of the people I work with want to do the right thing for their spouses. So I had a situation very, very similar to this. And husband voluntarily said, instead of splitting the retirement assets 50-50, he said, give her all of them because I will get my retirement assets when my parents pass away.
There's a good man.
He was a good man. He was a good man. Yeah. And his parents were already terminal. He was the only heir. So there wasn't, it would be different if he had a bunch of siblings and who knows how long mom and dad might live, those kinds of things. But yeah, those are the things though. Can you imagine having the rug yanked out from under you late in life?
No, I can't.
Yeah. And that
I've had my heart broken by women, but not my financial rug pulled out from underneath her.
Yeah.
But to have both.
Yeah.
Does it depend on the state? This is really got nothing to do with great divorce, but I guess maybe it does. If one spouse was cheating, does that affect the judge? I hope it does.
So
because it's usually the man that cheats. Yeah.
Give the caveat, I am not a lawyer, but legal information, yes, that has to do with, is your state a no-fault divorce or not? Now, the reality is, I think 40 states are no fault, which means we don't care about any bad behavior. There are some states, mostly in the Deep South, that are still fault states. It does not impact the property division. You will still get your 50-50 split, but it does impact alimony. It can impact alimony.
But in 40 states, that's not true.
Correct. They don't care about your bad behavior. It doesn't matter. What we do have is what are called marital waste claims. So let's say somebody is unfaithful during a marriage for a long period of time, unknown to the other spouse. I had a case representing wife where I was a forensic in this case. And I had to go back over 5 years of bank records, credit card statements. And it became very clear very quickly that husband was supporting another woman in another state and seeing her very frequently and spending a lot of money on this relationship. And so we were able to quantify it and had a $250,000 waste claim that basically said you spent all this money for purposes other than the benefit of the community. And in cases like that, then the other spouse is entitled to reimbursement.
And that's even in the 40 no-fault states? That gives me a little hope. Again, this would be another show. I'm not even sure you'd be interested in. And yeah, how the morals and ethics of this great nation have suffered since the greatest generation came home from World War II, and I think that's part of it. I think either spouse, this is not a man or woman thing, although statistics do say the man cheats more than the woman. That's just statistics. You can't argue it. But man or woman, I think if you cheat, all bets should be off. I just think that should be a 50-state rule.
All right, I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Play it with me.
Because after working with hundreds of couples, literally hundreds of couples, here's what I now know to be true. Infidelity is never the cause of divorce. Infidelity is a symptom of an already troubled marriage that isn't being taken care of. If you're unfaithful, you're being unfaithful because you have needs that aren't being met. So the real shame is that we haven't talked about it. We haven't dealt with it. We haven't gone to counseling. We lost our way a long time ago, and we didn't find our way back. And here's the other thing. You want to divorce-proof your marriage? Marriages go through ebbs and flows. We all know that. But if you find yourself feeling so far apart from your spouse that you're kind of like, gosh, I feel like we don't know each other anymore, you've got to stop it immediately. Because the longer that goes on, the less likely you are to be able to find your way back. It's really interesting because certified divorce financial analysts, we have like built-in marriage protection because we see this stuff every single day. So we are so attentive to our spouses, and we do everything to nourish our marriages. It's pretty amazing.
So what you just really suggested to me, that my third wife is probably a friend of yours, probably an associate, who is absolutely aware of it. It's just one of the things you mentioned close to 20 minutes ago, as that rift was being created and people didn't realize it, and it gets, the longer it goes, the harder it is. Sometimes that rift was not anyone really doing anything wrong, but one of the spouses, usually mom, having the children be number one in her life, which is what a great mom does. You can't not say that. It's almost unavoidable in some cases. While she was paying attention to being the best mom possible, which is, in fact, the hardest job in the world.
Right.
I hate when any men of any generation go, oh, she's home with the children. I've got the hard life making a living. I stayed home with children during my divorce because I had custody of them. There is nothing harder than being there for your children 24/7. Nothing.
Absolutely.
You can be the CEO of the largest company in the world. It's a vacation compared to being the sole responsibility to your children, which is usually what the matriarch of the family is.
And for the younger listeners out there, you want to make sure this doesn't happen to you. While you are in parent mode, set aside time for couple mode.
Yes.
The date
We
night.
never did that.
Lean on family and friends to take the kids once in a while so that you don't forget to be spouses and partners and lovers. And that's what ultimately leads to great divorce, is you start to lose touch then and you never find your way back.
Yeah. And again, in a lot of people's, I think, situations, you never find your way back to the passion and the bond. But now I'm in my 60s, and we took a cruise last week for 4 days, and we had fun, and we went away with a few friends, and oh my God, last weekend was a wedding. I haven't seen those people. You become friends that are happy living with each other. And again, today's generation, though, doesn't want to settle for that. My generation and older, they were happy with that. We're in our 60s. Is there passion? Are we going to be, can I not wait to get home and see her every day? Yeah, I can wait. But life is good. We're okay.
I say again, I'll have to play devil's advocate because I'm approaching 60 myself. And of course, my husband and I'm on my second marriage. We've been married 15 years. We're still pretty darn passionate. And there's I know a lot of people in their 60s that are rocking it. So
I hope so. Anthony, there's still hope for me. This is good. I'm going to get emotional over this one. Yeah, right. There's still hope. Well, just a quick reminder, this is 62 Who Knew, the podcast. Today's guest, Nancy Hetrick, is the absolute expert on gray divorce. And for those of you that didn't know that, gray divorce is divorce in your 40s, 50s, 60s. I know I've done mortgages for people getting divorced in their 70s. Now, that divorce almost always includes either the liquidation of one or two pieces of real estate, at least one, or at least the division of that real estate. Now, is there laws in different states that say, okay, there's $300,000 in equity, you've been married X amount of years, you either sell it and you each get $150, or marry if you want to keep the house, You got to give Bill 150 and then it's your house.
Correct.
Is it that equal? Is it that mathematic?
Usually. It is usually that. However, I love creative solutions for houses. And so for some of these boomer parents, the 50-year-old people that still have some kids at home because they're finishing college or high school, I'm doing a lot of agreements right now where they agree to continue to own the home together jointly. Mom and the kids are going to stay in it, and they're going to sell it 3 years from now and split the proceeds then. Because we have these amazing 2.75% mortgages. Why in the world would we force somebody to refinance at 7.5%? Like if I make either one of them do that, neither one of them is going to be able to afford to buy a home at all. So we're doing a lot of that. The other thing that we're doing for gray divorces is definitely making use of reverse mortgages where we can pull equity out of a house without giving that person a payment they have to afford down. Mm-hmm. And so reverse mortgages come into play a lot. There's also some new creative financing tools coming out that are going to enable gray divorce population to pull equity out without being burdened by payments. And so kind of watching some of these trends in the industry change almost directly as a result of this gray divorce phenomenon. They have these problems, and one of the things about the world of finance, if some area has got a problem, we're going to create a financial vehicle to solve it because it's all about making money, right? So if we can solve people's problems, we'll create that financial vehicle to do that.
Now, you brought up a very interesting thing, and of course, reverse mortgages are close to my heart. But one of the reasons why the reverse mortgage industry, and I'll just say it, has been decimated the last 2 years is when I go into someone's home, and I'm a dinosaur, so when I do a mortgage for somebody within a few hours, I drive there. I mean, these are people my age or older, and I want to sit at the dining room table or the kitchen table. I don't want to do it on Zoom. Now, I do business all over the country, so sometimes I have to. But to go in there and find out that they have a need. This is not a divorce. It could be a divorce or something else, but a need for more money. They're not having problems paying their bills. There's a need because of today's economic times, or maybe divorce. And I have to look at their statement and go, oh my God, you refinanced to 2.5% in July of 2020, and I'm here to give you a 7.25% reverse mortgage. Again, a lot of reverse mortgage people, God love them. Well, there's no payment. What's the difference? There is a difference. You're taking a 2.5% debt and you're replacing it with a 7.5% debt. That's not good for anyone. And it has decimated the reverse world. Something I bring up, and I will just for 30 seconds, is so many people are not aware that there is a reverse second mortgage. People don't use it. It was supposed to change the reverse mortgage world. It's been out for about 8 years. Almost no one utilizes it, and shame on the reverse mortgage world and financial planning world for not utilizing it. You're okay with your 2.5% mortgage? Yeah, we have no problem making the payment. I just need another $100,000. Well, Then why don't we do a reverse second, give you that $100,000 for no payments, and leave your 2.5% intact?
Exactly.
I mean, we had Nobel laureates saying that the reverse second mortgage was going to help save the greatest generation. Mm. And you can count the fingers on two hands of how many are done in this country.
Yeah.
So shame on the industry for that.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It is about educating professionals.
It's heartbreaking it is.
To make sure we know what we can offer.
Well, as I knew would happen, the hour is winding down so quickly, and we hope that we're going to see you again in the future. You brought up some other avenues that we're going to discuss just for a minute before we sign off. I can't help as our audience grows, and it's in the thousands. And why did I start, or why did we start 62 Who Knew? Same reason you do what you do, to help as many people as we can have a higher quality life. But I can't help that today's episode, out of the 137 that we've done, has got a couple of thousand of our viewers, I'd say half of them women, looking at their husband after watching this show across the dinner table going, I really haven't liked him in about 8 years. And he may have 600,000 in his 401k, and I may have 150 in mine. But Nancy said half of his is mine. So I think we did that. And then I think there's another couple of thousand men looking at their wives going, I listened to Nancy today. Honey, we need a date night. We've separated. We need to get back together.
Exactly.
And And she's thinking romance, and he's thinking, I'm not giving you half my 401k. So this is the weirdest it's the best 62 Who Knew I think we've had since going into a podcast. But I hope I know that there's thousands of viewers going, And I think that home will create a higher quality of life. Because one of the things we didn't talk about.
The other thing is that we have out there is folks that have already been through divorce that are going, why did I not bring in a financial professional? Because guys, there's a lot going on when you're this age and facing divorce. Please, please, please do not go through this without a financial expert trained in divorce. And one of my biggest warnings for you is really beware if your typical financial advisor starts giving you advice. Look, I've been a financial advisor 26 years. I've only been a divorce specialist for 13. I know so many things that I did not know when I was a traditional financial advisor. All right. So CDFA, Michael mentioned earlier, that certified divorce financial analyst. You need a specialist on your team. I am not exaggerating at all when I say that on average, I save my clients anywhere from $20,000 to $60,000 in taxes just by doing things creatively.
That's incredible. And of course, we are going to put your website. By the time this episode airs, which will only be next Monday, your website will be up on the 62 Who Knew website, which is, of course, www.62whoknew. So all our viewers can contact you directly. Well, God, every time you say something, I think of another question. If the divorce is final, but they didn't have an expert like you, is it just too late? Tough nuts, honey?
Possibly. Not always.
Wow.
I had a client come to me when their divorce was final, and no one had educated him about separate property laws. No one had told him that the 401k balance that he had when he got married was his sole and separate property. And the appreciation on that amount was also his sole and separate property.
That's incredible.
He had never been informed of that. And so I did a tracing for him, and he was able to then file an appeal and get that separate property recognized and actually have the property settlement adjusted. So there are situations where you can reopen the case.
God knows how many tens of thousands, maybe more, of people could take that advice and click on your website and just go, oh my God, I had a 401k with $100,000 in it 30 years ago. It's probably $250 today. And yet they weren't informed. That's just so incredible.
Likely even more. So now one thing I do want your viewers to know, I don't work with clients getting divorces anymore. I have retired out of that. I teach and train other advisors. So if you do need a contact, you can reach out to me and I'll put you in touch with some of the professionals in your area. But I also specialize in working with the gray divorce folks once the divorce is done and you need to rebuild your financial life and get your confidence back and have a new plan for what your adjusted retirement is going to look like.
All right, fantastic. Well, you brought up something that I'm going to end the show with, which there are other avenues. The financial world does tend to invent things. They invent vehicles as our financial needs change, and gray divorce is changing it. And next week, we're going to have special guests from Cornerstone Financial, which is one of those market changers, market disruptors. And we're going to be talking about the fractional sale of equity in your home. What? The fractional sale, that if you have $1 million home and it's free and clear, or a $600,000 home or a $3 million home, and you have the need for $100,000 or $300,000, you need a few $100,000 to buy out a spouse. You want a couple $100,000 to put into an indexed annuity. You're happily married, but you're not building for that retirement, and we need to do that. Yes, you can sell a fractional part of your home. This is nothing like a reverse mortgage. This is not a debt. And I know you were nice enough to sit in with the principals of Cornerstone Financial.
Yeah, I just learned about this last week. So the great news about this too, folks, is it doesn't mean you're selling a timeshare where people are going to come live in your house part of the year.
No, those are your in-laws. That's not a timeshare. Exactly. Those are your in-laws. Well, that's next week's show. Nancy, what can I say? I'm pretty sure we're going to break the attendance record today, as we did 3 years ago on the TV show. Just so happy to have you today. Happy to have you in the future, be part of a 62 Who Knew family. I know it opened my eyes, and I think it's going to open the eyes of thousands of our viewers today. You're always so wonderful to have. Have a nice time next week. Have a wonderful. What did you say you're doing? Is it a bike trip?
Motorcycle. That's a motorcycle rally in southern Arizona.
Oh, that's got to be fun to ride out there.
Oh, yeah.
Flat ground.
Perfect.
Yeah. All righty. Thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Okay.